Keir Starmer. I don't know if you've had time to read his speech.
Just tell us, where was it? Who was he speaking to? What was this?
So it's a conference organised by a relatively new group called Progressive Britain, who are on the progressive side of the Labour Party, probably do want to push more on the big, bold, radical side of things rather than the Ming Vars. But I thought it was I really did think it was one of his better speeches. But he actually talked about how he felt the Conservative Party is no longer conservative.
Well, I like all that stuff. I couldn't agree more with him on that. I thought that was very strong. So the centre of his speech, he says, as you said, that they've given up on family, they've given up on their international reputation. And he said, if people call me a conservative, I'm not going to be ashamed if being a conservative means those kind of things. So it was a nice push at that part of the speech towards the kind of conservatism I care about. However, what do you think about the speech as a whole?
I thought it did a lot of things that I want him to do. It was much more rounded about the kind of state of the world and the state of politics than he's been up to now. He's still, I think, deliberately short on the big ticket policy stuff. But I think this line that he used about you're going to get Clause 4 on steroids, Clause 4, the big thing that Tony Blair did in 1994, changing the Labour Party constitution. I think what he's doing there is setting up the next stages. And he's going to have to be held to that now. I think once you start to say things like that, you've got to come up with the big policy ideas. And do you know the other thing I think? This thing about the Conservatives, like if I think about you being a Conservative, I think your conservatism is very much rooted in history, culture, tradition, not changing things unless you really need to. And they come along, they want to change the sort of wreck the health service, change the BBC, pollute our seas and rivers with, unimaginable quantities of human wastage, and it's not very conservative. And I thought that was a smart place to be. But then the next bit of his kind of journey of leadership, I think, is going to be about taking 3 or 4 big areas where the big policy ideas come.
And that's what we have to see, because as you say, if you're going to talk about Clause 4 on steroids, I mean, Clause 4 was huge, probably the biggest thing that Labour Party had done. So Clause 4 on steroids, I don't quite understand what that can be that's going to be bigger than Clause 4.
12.
Well, I thought clause 4. I mean, I think this is another problem, isn't it, for all these politicians, that they have in their minds these radical moves. So the Conservatives, obviously, completely obsessed with Margaret Thatcher. And one of their problems is that they keep working out how they can outdo Margaret Thatcher. But of course, the thing she's done can't be done twice. Privatisation, selling off council houses, the restructuring the economy, and they're going to be able to do them again, right? He's not going to be able to get rid of Clause 4 twice. What's the big reform that he's going to bring to the Labour Party equivalent to Clause 4?
Well, he's talking about the reform of public services. Now,
but Clause 4 was a reckoning with the party,
yes,
right?
It was, but that's what, we've talked a lot about how leadership is about telling the party things it doesn't want to hear. But people go on about Clause 4, I think, much more because of the symbolism of that change. It didn't really indicate.
Remind us what Clause 4 was. What Clause 4 was
essentially. What did it say? Oh God, the common ownership and means of distribution and supply. I can't remember. Production, distribution, and supply.
But it was a sort of faintly Marxist sounding clause.
And it was something which the Labour Party no longer believed. Even Dennis Skinner didn't really believe in that as a kind of economic policy. So it was symbolic, and then the policy change followed from that. And I think with these missions, and I was doing an event on my new book. Thank you for continuing to plug it so relentlessly across social media.
But what can I do? Publish this week?
Yeah. Thank you, Rory. And Politics on the Edge will be coming out in September. But I did an event last night with Beth Rigby from Sky, of the How To Academy. And so about 500 or 600 people there, obviously coming out on a Tuesday night to listen to me and Beth Rigby talk about a book about politics. They're interested in politics. Somebody asked a question about the missions, the 5 Labour missions, and I asked for a show of hands in the audience who has heard of the 5 Labour missions, and it was a minority. It was a minority. So my point on that is that they've still got to communicate the basic big picture that they're trying to get over.
There is a messaging problem. I'm not sure he's quite tightened his language enough. So there were 3 big words that he was selling in the speech. Do you remember what those words were? Service, respect, and stability. But even when you say it, service, respect, stability. I mean, obviously, I love that stuff. Sounds very conservative. I love service, respect, stability. But it doesn't exactly trip off the tongue, does it? Service, respect, stability. There's a lot of S's going on.
It's kind of him, though. I think this respect thing, I know, goes very deep with him.
Sibilance, service, respect, stability.
Okay. Well, that's a minor linguistic point as opposed to a major political strategic point. This respect thing is massive for him.
They're also not action words. That's another thing, maybe.
Just service is an action word.
Push you on a sort of as a communications expert. If I came to you and said my 3 big words, and I run a campaign on service, respect, and stability, it's not a call to action exactly, is it?
But Gordon ran on stability and did very, very well, but as a chancellor rather than as the leader of the party. What were your 3 in London again? What were your 3 in London again?
Fair, Green, United.
Fair, Green, United.
Normally you would want to say stability, and this is what Gordon Brown did, if you are the government, because as George Osborne was saying in just to plug it, our leading interview, which is out this week.
Which is doing ridiculously well.
Very, very well. Just go to your podcast feed, search for Leading.
Leading George Osborne.
Yeah. But in that, he pointed out that basically you've got 2 strategies. Either you're in opposition, in which case you say things have got to change, or you're in government, in which case you have to say stability, basically. You have to say, give us a chance.
Gordon and you had in opposition.
You had a good phrase for it, though, didn't you? You said, lot done.
Lots done.
Yeah.
Lots to do. Lots to lose.
Obviously, Keir Starmer's not going to be particularly listening to me, but I think I do represent a certain kind of floating voter. And when I saw that speech, I felt there was still not enough optimism, vision, and hope. There was quite a lot of... he did quite a lot on how dare they bail out the bankers and make poor people pay to bail out the banks. Now, as far as I know, Labour Party policy at the time was to provide state support for those banks. He's not laying out what the alternative is there. That's a grudge from 2008-9. Who's he playing to there? Where's the constituency for that stuff?
I think that's the sort of a Labour, a sort of strong tribal Labour base that really wants to hear the Tories getting the boot put into them.
And did Tony Blair do that? Did you feel you had to do that in 95, 96?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Tony didn't like doing the sort of nasty, negative stuff, but he could do it. I remember do you remember when he did John Maydrove, the dispatch box? Weak. And you could feel the blow landing with each word. I remember he came out and said, I didn't like doing that. I said, yeah, but he did it.
And I guess he did it on the ERM. He would have done it on the bailing out of the European exchange rate mechanism and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And I think a little bit of iron has entered Keir's soul post-Sunak. I think he's been quite taken aback by how quite nasty Sunak can be, all this lefty lawyer stuff and constant misrepresentation. He did it again the other day about the police numbers and the crime figures. And so I think, I don't know, I feel Keir's moved into a different gear, but I agree with you, I still want more in that speech that says this is what Britain's going to be like if you have 10 years of a Labour government.
And I think there's a lovely phrase that John McCain loved, which is that people like voting for a politician who's a happy warrior. They like the sense of the confident, happy optimism.
Well, that was Johnson's strength.
That was Johnson's strength, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to see a little bit of that.
Yeah, a bit of happy warrior.